Good day, everyone. So our lesson for this day is about the inverse trigonometric functions. Learning outcome of the lesson. At the end of the lesson, the student is able to illustrate the domain and range of the inverse trigonometric function, evaluate an inverse trigonometric expression, solve situational problems involving inverse trigonometric functions. Then ang outline natin, syempre, about the inverse trigonometric functions. In the previous lesson on function, algebraic and trigonometric, given a number in the domain of a function, we computed for the value of the function at the number. Now, given a value in the range of the function, we reverse this process by finding the number in the domain whose function value is the given one. So in this lesson, we first restrict the domain of each trigonometric function because each of them is not one-to-one. So we then define each respective inverse function and evaluate the function of the inverse trigonometric function. All the trigonometric functions that we consider are periodic over their entire domains. This means that all trigonometric functions are not one-to-one if we consider their whole domains, which implies that they have no inverses over those sets. But there is a way to make each of the trigonometric function one-to-one. This is done by restricting the respective domains. The restriction will give us well-defined inverse trigonometric function. Kasi di ba hindi naman lahat ng trigonometric function ay one-to-one. So para makapasok tayo sa tinatawag na one-to-one function, so magkakaroon lang tayo ng tinatawag na restrictions about the domain. So the domain of a sine function is the set of real numbers and its range is the closed interval 1, 1. As observed in the previous lesson, the sine function is not one-to-one, and the first step is to restrict its domain by agreeing what the convention is with the following condition. First condition, the sine function is one-to-one in the restricted domain, and the range remains the same. So, gagamit tayo ng restriction about the sine function para ma-meet natin yung tinatawag na one-to-one function. So, the inverse of the restricted sine function, f of x equals to sine x, where the domain is restricted to the closed interval in between negative pi halves, comma pi halves, is called the inverse sine function or arcsine function, denoted by the symbol of the inverse function of x is equals to the inverse of sine x, or the inverse of the function f of x is equals to arc sine x. Here, the domain of the inverse of arc sine x is, ang magiging domain natin ay closed interval negative 1, 1. And its range, ang magiging range natin ay closed interval negative pi halves over pi, pi halves. Thus, the inverse function of sine x or y equals arc sine x if and only if sine y is equals to x, where x is in between negative 1 and 1, and y is in between negative pi halves and pi halves, positive pi halves. So through the lesson, we interchangeably use the inverse of sine x and arc sine x to mean that the inverse of the sine function. Okay, so by example, meron tayong for example, ito pagkuha naman ng value ng inverse of a sine function. So find the exact value of each expression. So meron tayong inverse of sine 1/2, yun yung letter A natin, and yung arc sine of negative 1, arc sine 0, and inverse of sine negative 1/2. So ang ginagamit natin dito yung inverse sine at saka yung arc sine, although same lang naman yun ng notation. Okay, so isa-isay natin ito. May dalawang paraan din ng pagkuha. Pwede yung using table o kaya naman yung scientific calculator. Pakita natin. So by a solution under A, let the theta is equals to the inverse of sine 1/2. This is equivalent to sine theta equals 1/2. Pag kinuha natin yung equivalence ng inverse of sine 1/2, the same din yan sa sine theta. Using the theta, no? Sine theta equals 1/2. This means that we're looking for the number theta. So ang target natin ngayon itong the value of theta in real number. So in the closed interval, kasi di ba, kailangan lang natin ay yung 1-to-1 function. So kaya meron tayong restriction. Gumagamit tayo ng closed interval. Ang ating closed interval, negative pi halves, comma pi halves, whose sign is 1/2. We get that 0 under the restriction, or we get the theta, the value of theta under the restriction is pi over 6. Thus, we have the inverse of sine 1/2 is equals to pi over 6. Or in return, pwede natin sabihin na yung sine pi over 6 is equals to 1/2. Okay? Ibig sabihin, di ba, yung value ng ating real number theta is pi over 6. Ayan, okay? Nakuha natin ngayon yung target natin. So the inverse of sine 1/2 is pi over 6. Next, yung letter B naman, arcsine -1. So, ang arcsine -1 is equals to negative pi halves because the value of sine negative pi halves is -1. And negative pi halves is an element of the restriction. Di ba? Restriction natin ay negative pi halves, close interval, comma, pi halves. So, meaning to say, the negative pi halves is an element of the closed interval. Ayan. Okay? Kasi di ba pag sinabi natin arcsine -1, meaning to say that is sine, we use the theta as the inverse of sine function. Yung meron tayong symbol na -1 inversion. Then, given value ay negative 5 halves. Ay, rather -1. Ayan. -1. Ayan. Para makuha natin yung value ng theta. Okay. So, pwede ang isang paraan na gamitin natin ay ang scientific calculator. Ayan. So, tingnan natin na pag gumamit tayo ng scientific calculator. Okay. So, dito sa scientific calculator, naka-flash yung screen ngayon. Tingnan natin. So, para magamit nito, ang gawin mo lang ay pindutin mo lang itong shift. Tapos itong sign. Kasi dun sa shift, sign, sa upper portion ng sign ay meron doong inverse. Nakikita nyo na inverse. Ayan, sign. So, yun ang kinukuha natin. Shift, sign. Then, yung real number, -1. So, press lang natin itong negative. Then, press natin yung 1. Then, equal. Yan, meron tayong -90. So, ang result natin dito sa scientific ay, since naka-degree mode, yung ating scientific naka-degree mode, kaya ibibigay niya ay -90. Then, i-convert na lang natin yung -90 sa tinatawag nating radian value. Siyempre, ang radian value niya, ang -90, pwede mo siyang i-divide into 180. Diba? -90 divided by 180, meron kang 1/2 or -1/2, diba? Negative 90, divide mo lang yan sa, okay, ulitin natin na. Sa negative 90, pag dinivide mo yan sa 180, yung conversion, meron tayong negative 0.5 or negative 1 half. Then, combine mo na lang with the value of pi. Kaya, dagdagan mo na lang siya ng pi. So, negative 0.5 pi or negative 1 half pi. Okay? So, yun yung isang paraan using scientific calculator. Okay. So, ayan. Okay. So, ang value natin ngayon ng arc sine negative 1 is negative pi halves. Next, letter C, arc sine 0. Siyempre, pag ginamit mo lang yung calculator mo, shift sine 0, then equals, ibibigay lang niya ay 0. And the last, the inverse of sine negative 1 half. Gawin mo lang ay shift, then sine negative 0.5. Kasi di ba, negative 1 half is also negative 0.5. Kaya meron kang negative pi over 6 in the radian value. Pero pag sa degree value, that is negative 30. Sa degree value, negative 30. Sa radian, negative pi over 6. Okay? So, yun yung mga paraan natin para kuhanin yung exact value ng tinatawag nating inverse sine function. Okay, so next example, find the exact value of each expression. Okay, so isa-isay natin na. Ito muna ang letter A. The value of sine of inverse sine 1 half. Or pwede natin sabihin the value of sine arc sine 1 half. Okay. So by solution, kuhanin muna natin yung arc sine ng 1 half. Itong nasa portion na to. Okay, so ang value ng arc sine 1 half is pi over 6. Pwede mo rin yung gamitin yung shift sine 0.5 na meron kang 30 degrees sa degree measure. Sa radian measure ay pi over 6. Then, tsaka mo ngayon, kuhanin yung value ng sine pi over 6. Kasi di ba itong portion na to ay sine pi over 6. Substitute mo lang doon, no? Ayan. So, instead na inverse of sine 1 half, mapapalitan na to ng pi over 6. And then, pag kinuha natin ng sine pi over 6, di ba? Babalik ka lang din. Sine, kumbaga sa degree ay sine 30, at ang magiging value lang nun ay 1 half. Sine pi over 6 or sine 30 degrees is 1 half. Kaya dito sa ating given, sine of arc sine 1 half is also 1 half. Parang yung sagot niya, nandun lang din sa question. Okay, next. Example number 2, letter B naman. Okay, letter B. Mapapansin natin dito are arc sine of sine pi over 3. Arc sine of sine pi over 3. Okay, by solution, kuhanin mo natin yung value ng sine pi over 3. At ang pi over 3 radian sa degree measure yan ay 60. Kapag kinama ang sine 60, merong square root of 3 over 2 or sine pi over 3, square root of 3 over 2. Approximately, that is 0.663. or 0.8660. Square root of 3 over 2. 0.8660. Then, substitute na natin ito. Itong value ng sine pi over 3 dito. So, ang mangyayari ngayon ay arc sine pi over or square root of 3 over 2. Magiging arc sine square root of 3 over 2. Kasi sinabstitute na natin yung value ng sine pi over 3. Then, makukuha natin ang value nito kasi ito yung arc sine. Pag kinuha natin ang arc sine nun, ang ibibigay lang din nun ay babalik ka rin din sa pi over 3 or sa 60 degrees. Okay? Kaya yung ating arc sine of sine pi over 3, ang sagot nun ay nandun lang din sa question. Nandun lang din. Next, example number 2 under letter C, the value of arc sine of sine pi. Pag kinuha natin ang sine pi, that is obviously 0. Pi is radian measure and the degree measure of that is 180 degrees. So sine 180 degrees is 0. Then, instead na sine pi, papalitan natin ang 0. And the arc sine of 0 is also 0. Okay? Then, example 2 under D, we have the sine of inverse sine negative 1/2. Pag kinuha natin ang inverse sine of negative 1/2, that is negative pi over 6 or negative 30 degrees in degree measure. Then, substitute natin, instead na inverse of sine negative 1/2, papalitan natin ang negative pi over 6. So, meron na tayong sine of negative pi over 6. And pag kinuha natin ang value nyon, that is the same with negative 1/2. Ayan. Kaya parang babalik lang din siya. Okay? Okay, that's it. Next in line is the inverse of a cosine function. The development of the other inverse trigonometric function follows similarly from that of the inverse of sine function. So y is equals to inverse of cosine x or y equals arc cosine x, meaning it means that cosine y is equals to x, where x is in between closed interval negative 1 and 1. And y is in between closed interval 0 and given theta. Okay, so ang next natin ay yung pagkuha naman natin ng value ng inverse of cosine function. Same procedure din dahil sa ating sine function, yung pagkuha ng inverse nun. So, meron tayong 6 given example. O, simulan natin with the inverse of cosine 0. Okay, so the inverse of cosine 0 is pi over 2 because the cosine pi over 2 is 0. Diba? Pag kinuha natin kasi ito in the form of yung inverse of cosine 0, pwede siyang maging cosine theta equals 0. Ayan. So, ang target natin dito ay the value of the theta. Para makuha mo yon, gamitin mo lang yung r cos 0 or r cosine 0. Pag gumamit ka ng scientific, ang gawin mo lang ay shape cosine 0. Siyempre, pag init mo yung shape cosine 0, bibigay niya ang 90 degrees, degree measure. Syempre, sa radian measure, ang 90 ay pi over 2. At ang pi over 2 is an element of 0, pi. Okay? Letter B. Arc cosine of negative square root of 3 over 2. And that is equal to 5 pi over 6. So, pwede natin siyang i-convert. Kasi itong arc cosine ay pwede siyang maging theta equal shift cosine or the inverse of cosine. The inverse of cosine, negative square root of 3 over 2. Ayan, okay? Itong square root of 3 over 2 ay ano ito, approximately negative 0.866 and so on. Kaya pwede mong gamitin ng shift cosine. Yan, then negative 0.866 and so on. So meron kang 149.997. Pwede na siya sa 150. 150 sa degree measure yan to be exact. So 150 sa degree measure. Okay. Kailangan natin siya i-convert into real number using the radian measure. So ang gawin mo lang ay 150 multiply mo with 1/8 multiply mo with pi over 180. Kaya meron kang, sa conversion niya na, multiply mo lang with, times mo with pi over 180. Ayan, para sa conversion. Kaya mamimit mo ang pi over 6. 5 pi over 6. Ayan, approximately, kung gusto mo ng real number, so 5 times 5 times divided by 6. Approximately, meron kang 2.62. Approximately na. Sa real number, 2.62. Yeah. Kasi 2.61799. So, 2.62. Okay? So, yun yung value ng ating angle theta. And that is also belong dun sa ating restriction. Ang restriction natin ay 0 pi. 0 pi. Ang pi naman ay nasa 3 point something yan. So, pasok pa rin. Kasi ang value lang natin ay 2.62. Okay? Next. Letter C. Cosine of inverse cosine negative square root of 3 over 2. Siyempre, ang value natin ay negative square root of 3 over 2. Oo, kasi babalik lang naman yun eh. Pag kinuha mo ang value nito, magiging value nitong nasa loob. Shift cosine negative 0.866. Meron tayong 150 at pag kinuha mo na ng cosine value ng 150 sa degree yan meron kang negative square root of 3 over 2. Babalik lang din siya. Ayan, babalik lang din siya. Okay? And also, ang value ng negative square root of 3 over 2 approximately, yan ay negative 0.866. So, also belong to the restriction. in between close interval negative 1, comma 1. Okay? Kaya qualified pa rin. Next, letter D. Okay, so the arc cosine of cosine 3 pi over 4. So pag kinuha natin ang value ng cosine 3 pi over 4, convert muna natin. Ang 3 pi over 4 sa degree ay 135. Sa degree yun kinonvert ko lang. So cosine 135. Kapag naka-degree mode. Ayan. Then, kuhanin mo lang yung kanyang arc cosine. Siyempre, bago makuha yung arc cosine nun, kuhanin mo muna yung value ng 135. Eh, ang 135, cosine 135 ay equal sa negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay? Kaya, ang mangyayari ngayon ay kuhanin mo ang arc cosine ng negative square root of 2 over 2. Ayan. Ang square root of 2 over 2 approximately ay nasa negative 0.707. Pag kinamang shift cosine ng negative 0.707, ayan, malapit ka na sa 135 or sakto na sa 135. Kaya babalik ka rin din. Positive yun 135. Sa degree, syempre sa radian nun ay 3 pi over 4. Approximately, dapat pasok itong 3 pi over 4 under ito ng restriction natin, close interval 0 and pi. Eh pag kinuha naman natin ang 3 times pi divided by 4, approximately siya ay 2.36. Ayan. Itong value na to. Ito. Ang value na to ay nasa 2.36. Pasok pa rin, di ba? Dahil ang pi ay 3.16 eh. So, pasok siya. Okay? Next, letter E. Arc cosine of cosine 7 pi over 6. Ang 7 pi over 6, pag kinuha natin sa degree measure, yan ay 210. Then, ang value ng cosine 210 ay negative square root of 3 over 2. Ayan. So, ang value nito ay negative square root of 3 over 2. Then, pag kinuha mo yung inverse nun, our cosine ay magiging 5 pi over 6. Then, last, yung letter F, mapapansin natin dito sa letter F, pinagsama natin yung dalawang sign, dalawang function, sine and cosine. Okay, so pag kinuha natin muna ang value ng inverse nung cosine square root of 2 over 2, that is also pi over 4. Ito, ang value ng inverse ng square root of 2 over 2 ay pi over 4. Sa degree yon ay 45. Ito ay magiging pi over 4. Eh, syempre, pag kinuha mo ang value ng sine pi over 4 or sine 45, the same lang yan sa square root of 2 over 2. Kaya pwede silang maging equal value. Mapapansin mo parehas lang. Kasi pag tingnan natin sa circular function, so nandito yung ating 45 degrees. 45 degrees in degree measure at yung kanyang radian naman ay pi over 4. At ang kanyang ang cosine value niya ay square root of 2 over 2. At ang kanyang sine value ay square root of 2 over 2. Parehas lang. Parehas lang sila. Okay? Ayan, okay. Next, since meron na tayong dalawang inverse ng sine at inverse ng cosine, so pwede natin gamitin yon to simplify something. Like example number 5, simplify the value of sine quantity of arc sine 2 over 3 plus arc cosine 1/2. Okay, verify natin. So pag sinabi natin simplify, ang target natin dito ay yung exact value nitong given expression. We know that the arc cosine 1/2 is pi over 3. Okay, so meron na tayo value nitong arc cosine. Kasi pwede mo na nga i-direct So, shift cosine 0.5. So, meron kang 60 degrees. Sa radian yun ay pi over 3. Then, gamitin natin yung sine sum identity. So, pag ginamit natin, kasi di ba meron siyang arc sine plus arc cosine. So, pwede natin gamitin yung sine sum identity. Since meron tayong value ng arc cosine, instead ng arc cosine, substitute natin yung pi over 3. So, mangyayari lang ay sine of arc sine 2/3 plus pi over 3. Then, sine sum identity. So, meron tayong sine arc sine 2/3 cosine pi over 3 plus cosine arc sine 2/3 sine pi over 3. Diba yung rule natin sa sine sum identity ay sine, cosine, cosine, sine. Okay? Then ito lang yung ating angle A and angle B. Ayan siya. Okay? Next, simplify natin. Okay, so pag kinuha natin ang sine of arc sine 2/3, o diba, parang ano lang siya, reverse. Siyempre, lalabas lang ang 2/3. Okay, 2/3. Then, yung cosine pi over 3, plus mo lang cosine pi over 3, or ang pi over 3 ay sa degree ay 60. So, pwede mo i-direct cosine 60, meron kang 1/2. Okay, so, 2/3 times 1/2 plus cosine arc sine 2/3. Okay, wala tayong exact value na, no? Arc sine 2/3. Then, ang sine pi over 3 or sine 60. Sa degree yan, 60. Sine 60, meron kang square root of 3 over 2. Okay, sinimplify lang natin yung mga value na pwedeng isimplify. Na meron siyang exact. Then, pwede natin kuhanin ng 2/3 and times 1/2. Eliminate na yung 2. Matitira na lang ang 1/3. Then, ang mangyayari ngayon, ayan. 1/3, inayos lang natin yung form. So, 1/3 plus yung square root of 3 over 2, pwede siya sa unahan ng cosine. Square root of 3 over 2 cosine arc sine 2/3. Then, di pa tapos siya na. Tutuloy pa natin yan. Okay, so dito tayo nag-end. Sine, yung given natin sine of arc sine 2/3 plus arc cosine 1/2 is equals to 1/3 plus square root of 3 over 2 cosine arc sine 2/3. Okay, we compute. Kung kailangan ma-compute natin itong cosine of arc sine 2/3. So, cosine of arc sine 2/3, let theta be the value of arc sine 2/3. Kasi para ma-meet natin yung cosine theta. So, pag ginawa natin to as a theta, mangyayari ngayon ay cosine theta. Yan. So, by definition, the sine theta equals 2/3. Di ba yun yung ating arc sine 2/3? By definition, kasi ang arc sine 2/3 ay pwede siyang maging sine theta equals 2/3. Eh, ang 2/3 natin, kapag tingnan natin sa circular function, the theta, angle theta lies in the first quadrant. Dahil ang 2/3 ay positive value. So, that is in the first quadrant. So, pag sa first quadrant, all trigonometric functions are positive. So, using Pythagorean identity, gamitin natin yung Pythagorean identity na. So, meron tayo ngayong cosine of arc sine 2/3 instead na cosine of arc sine 2/3, pwede na natin gamitin yung cosine theta. Kasi ginamit natin as the theta, ang theta natin ay arc sine 2/3. So, cosine theta is equals to square root of 1 minus sine squared theta. Okay? 1 minus sine squared theta. Then, meron tayong value ng sine theta. Ang value ng sine theta natin ay 2/3 because we define as arc sine 2/3 as sine theta equals 2/3. So, pwede natin siya i-substitute. Yung 2/3, pwede natin i-substitute dito sa buong ito. Ayan. So, ang mangyayari ngayon ay cosine theta is equals to square root of 1 minus 2/3 squared. Siyempre, ang 2/3 squared ay 4/9. Then, kuhanin mo lang yung square root 1 minus. Siyempre, ang 1 minus 4/9 ay magiging 9. Then, 9 minus 4 ay 5. Yan. Kapag kinuha mo ang square root niyan, square root of 5/9, ang 9 ay perfect square. So, pwede nang kuhanin yung exact root ng 9, which is 3. Then, sa numerator natin, remain ang square root of 5. Siyempre, ang kuha natin yung value ay yung positive value kasi nasa first quadrant tayo. Okay, so the result of cosine theta is square root of 5/3. Going back to the original computation above, we have, nakuha natin yung value ng cosine theta na square root of 5/3. Then, balik na tayo dun sa original computation natin. Okay, so ito yung ating original solution. Since the cosine of arc sine 2/3 is equal to square root of 5/3, then yung original natin, sine of arc sine 2/3 plus arc cosine 1/2 is equals to 1/3 plus square root of 3/2 cosine of arc sine 2/3. Yon ay yung value noon. So, yung value nito ay the same as square root of 5/3. So, simplify na natin. So, meron na tayo ngayong 1/3 plus, product lang naman yun eh. So, magiging 6. At yung numerator naman ay square root of 15. Okay, so pwede pa natin simplify ito, no? So, pwede siya maging numerator, denominator ang 6. At sa taas naman ay 2 plus square root of 15. Ayan. Okay, so ito na yung ating result. Ayan. So, 2 plus square root of 15/6. Ayun ngayon yung value ng ating sine of arc sine 2/3 plus arc cosine 1/2. And that's it. Okay. Example of situational problems involving inverse trigonometric function. Example 11. A student is viewing a painting in a museum. Standing 6 foot from the painting, the eye level of the student is 5 foot above the ground. If the painting is 10 foot tall, and its base is 4 feet above the ground. Find the viewing angle subtended by the painting at the eyes of the student. So ito yung eye level, then yung height ng student ay 5 feet. At yung taas ng painting or yung haba ng painting ay 10 feet tall. Then from the ground, syempre meron pang yung taas niya ay 4 feet. Then yung viewing angle niya, syempre kung eye level, ang viewing angle niya ay mula dun sa buong painting, di ba? Yun yung kanyang viewing angle. Then syempre ang kapantay niya ay sea level, ayan, okay. Standing 6 foot from the painting. Yung distance ng student dun sa painting ay 6 feet. So, ang question ngayon, find the viewing angle subtended by the painting at the eyes of the student. Ayan. Yung viewing angle niya. No? Okay? So, dito sa ating sketch, pag nilagay natin siya, okay, let theta be the viewing angle and let the theta is equal to angle alpha plus angle beta. Ito ngayon yung ating sketch using the different angles. Okay, so yung viewing angle natin, yung angle theta. Then meron tayong two angles na mapoform. Yung angle alpha, mula dun sa distance, di ba ang distance ay 6 foot. This 6 feet distance niya sa student dun sa image. Then yung taas ng image ay 10 feet. Okay. Then makikita natin dito, pag kinuha natin ang tangent alpha, yun nasa ilalim. Kasi i-add mo yung alpha and angle beta eh. Eh di ba ang tangent ay opposite over adjacent. So meron tayong opposite 1 and adjacent natin ay 6 foot. So ang tangent alpha ay 1 over 6. At ang tangent beta naman ay opposite 9, adjacent 6. Opposite over adjacent. Okay. Next, since dalawang ating angle, the sum of A and B or alpha and beta, that's the angle theta, yung viewing angle. So pwede natin gamitin ang tangent sum identity. So sa tangent sum identity, that is tangent theta, yung viewing angle, that is the sum of tangent A plus or alpha plus beta. So yung tangent sum identity, that is tangent alpha plus tangent beta all over 1 minus tangent alpha times tangent beta. And that is 1 over 6 plus 9 over 6 all over 1 minus 1 over 6 times 9 over 6. So sa numerator muna, magiging 10 over 6. Ang denominator mo naman ay 1 minus, pwede nang i-lowest term ito, by 3. So ito ay magiging 3. Ito naman ay magiging 2. Then, 3 over 6, pwede na siyang maging. So 1 half ito. At ito naman ay magiging 1 half pa rin. 3 over 6 is 1 half eh. So magiging 1 fourth times to 1 fourth. Ayan. Ito naman ay pwedeng by 2. Sabi, pwede na itong maging, ang lowest term nito ay pi over 3. Then 1 minus 1 fourth, 3 fourth na yun, no? So magiging 5 over 3 over 3 fourth. Cancel na yung, may mga cancel ba? Kasi magiging yun eh, 5 over 3 times 4 over 3. Kaya magiging 20 over 5 ito, no? So 20 over 9. Ayan. So, ang angle theta natin ay 20 over 9. Okay? Next, since ang target natin ay yung angle viewing or yung viewing angle, so kailangan natin gamitin yung arctan. O, ang gagawin mo lang ay shift tangent, then 20 divided by 9. Then, meron kang approximately, using calculator, arctan ang gagamitin mo, shift tangent, 20 divided 9. So, meron kang approximately 65.8 degrees. Sa degree yan 65.8 degrees. Okay, so yung viewing angle natin, 65.8 degrees. Okay, and that's all.